to see you, every one of you. All right. I'm actually, I'm not fully continuing from last week, but we heard how we need to live alive. We have to walk alive, not dead. And continuing with it, the topic, the title for today's message is God is complete. We need to understand this whole thing called God is complete. Just confess it with me, saying, God is complete. He's not evolving. He's not an organism which continues to grow and adapt to the environment. He does not change. The thing is, our opinions and our understandings will not change God. He is God. And if our opinions and our ideas about God actually drifts us away from God. See, the amazing part is God says, seek me. And when he says, seek me, it is for us to know who God is. We seek him because he is there. He's not hiding. He's not lost. He hasn't gone on a holiday. All right, he is not working from 8 to 5. He's 24/7. He's not subject to his creation. So when he's not subject to his creation, he stands out of his creation. So when he stands out of his creation, he stands out of time. He stands out of matter. So time is not relevant to God because he stands out of time. Because he's not in this moving towards the end. So then other thing is, God created science. If there was no creation which is so amazingly crafted and engineered, we wouldn't have science. We wouldn't have zoology. We wouldn't have botany. We wouldn't have engineering, chemical engineering. We wouldn't have anything because it's amazing. This was a while ago. Puma had a slogan saying, we don't create, but we discover. Science discovers things. And when it discovers things, you go like, whoa. They get excited. But when you really look at the complication woven into this metabolisms and what else, atoms and matter. We all know that you can't mix oil with water. You can try to engineer it, but you still won't be able to mix it. But science itself, sees, and then it gets wowed by this amazing discovery. And it's amazing science, the real scientists who are actually documenting botany, zoology, the body parts, were all Christians in universities. And they were actually looking and they were getting wowed by him, this creation. Because I think I mentioned it so many times, you can take some matter and put together, even like example was this cupcake. You can churn it for 8 million years. You won't get a cupcake perfected. Because there's a process. And the process can't be an accident as well. Because that's why they don't wonder, the guys from even the scientific world, the guys from metaphysics, and then you have the philosophies. They don't cross their universities. They leave them alone, because once you bring all of them together, you find like, whoa, something greater is there. So now, to counter that, people say there is this great Mother Earth which is beyond us. And even when they can't even understanding, they'll say there are aliens around. So still there are people who are waiting to find Martians in Mars. And so what we can see is, even through science, it affirms that God exists. If you really look into every little thing, and the liquid blood in our body is so complicated. It looks very simple, but it actually runs us completely. And if you find in the Bible, God says, life is in the blood. Life is in the blood. It's something that we see. It's what God has created. And then God, I am. That's it. He said, I am. Because why he said, I am, is that we can't compare him to anything in his creation. So if God showed Moses, I am, and then he showed his glory, Moses couldn't have even explained what it was, because he will be completely dumbstruck, because he will be comparing God. But God stands out of his creation. Then he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. The beginning and the end. The first and the last. First and last of what? God exists. He is eternal God. But when he says, I am the first and the last, or the beginning or the end, it is relevant to us, his creation. So what he's saying is, for you, from your beginning to the end, I am there. He's not saying there is a beginning of God and an end of God. It is relevant to us. His creation. There is a beginning of the creation, and there's going to be an end. But from that moment onward, what he says is, you will be in with me for eternity. So he holds eternity. So when you really look at it, God is complete. We can't say, God, you don't understand what I'm going through. We can tell somebody else saying, you don't get what I'm going through. But we can't turn to God and say, you don't get what I'm going through. Lord, you don't know this new age culture. You were there long time ago, not now. We can't say it. We can't tell God, you are old. You don't get this new technology. Try again? Okay, we'll do another technology. Anyway, see, God understands everything, because the technology itself is run by his own creation. You can, if something's not working, you can pray over it. God is able to help you on there. But He, in His creation, He made us with something called a free will. Now, the creation itself has an order and a pattern. Who can change the winter, the seasons? Nobody can change it. You can change the dates. But it's amazing how, whether we say it, whether the calendar says, whether the government say it, the trees are starting to change color, regardless of what we say. It's out of our control, but it continues. The birds, I still don't understand that bird who comes and pecks on that mirror constantly from car to car to car. But he does it constantly for the last, I think we've been here 9 years. It's been like that for the last 9 years. But the bird itself has a pattern. Keeps doing the same thing over and over again. If you take a mosquito, from a larvae stage, it flies out, drinks some blood or sap. If it's a vegetarian, it'll go sap. Then if it's a carnivorous, it'll drink some blood, comes back, lays some eggs, annoys us, then lays some eggs and dies. It can be within 48 hours. That's it. It does the same thing over and over and over and over again. But amazingly, God created humans, Adam and Eve. And what did He say? He created Adam and He created Eve after that. And then He said, I give you dominion on this creation. Be fruitful, multiply. Take care of this. So sometimes we can say, why did God do that? Why would He do that and put us into trouble? And in Paul says in Romans chapter 9, he says, we can't say, why? Because God created us for a fellowship with Him. But He didn't want a fellowship where that we act like robots. If you have trained your children, just imagine you come home and they come stand in front. You all would have watched this thing called Sound of Music, right? There the kids have to line up to greet the dad. And it's a military way. But there's no love in it. They don't choose to come and embrace Him because they were so regimented. If you are regimented, you wouldn't like it. But you'll get excited when you come home or something, kids run and greet you. Maybe any other place, somebody comes and greet you. You get excited because somebody greeted you without saying, everybody, captain's on deck. You need to greet the captain. No, they gave it out of their heart. When Julius Caesar led the armies towards Rome, he didn't have to tell his soldiers, you follow me. They actually followed him to the death. They knew where they were going. That's why he used this thing called the die is cast. You have no way of going back. And the soldiers followed him. Not because they were regimented, because they loved this guy so much. Same with Alexander the Great. The people followed with passion. Where does it come from? It comes from God itself, Himself. He loves us to have that free will. That's why when Adam and Eve sinned, what does the Bible say in Genesis? He was walking in that garden in the cool of the day. And then he goes, "Hey, where's Adam? Adam, where are you?" Because he doesn't see Adam. And Adam says, "I'm hiding." You think that God did not know that he was hiding? He knew that they were hiding. He knew what would have even happened, because he stands out of the time periods. So he sees everything in a moment of time. And what happens? He wanted Adam and Eve to confess. When it comes to Cain and Abel, before Cain killed Abel, God said, "I know your heart is not right. You need to take control of this situation." But what happened? Cain still went and killed his brother. And what happens? God comes and says, "Cain, where's it?" And the neighbor goes like, "Who? Am I my brother's keeper? Why are you asking me?" You think God didn't know? No, God wanted him to confess what he did. Confess what he did. But his confession was an arrogant confession. If he actually repented in that time, he would have been forgiven. Because when God said the blood is crying out from the ground, "What have you done?" And then he declared a judgment. What did Cain say? He says, "I can't bear it, don't." And what did God do? He held back. He put a mark on him. It's not that God is changing, that we can change his mind. It's because God has plans of good for us and not of evil. That's why he tries to always hold back. He holds back. Then God allows things to happen. Sometimes when we at our home, the boys and us, we make Lego, complicated Lego stuff. Sometimes they want to do their own thing. Then you can see that it's not going to go right. But they are adamant that it is going to go right. And they'll do it. What do? We won't interfere with it, but until it goes a bit upset and they say, "Can you help me to sort this, fix it out?" That's the time we get involved. Likewise, God allows things to happen for our own benefit, so that we learn things. When you have a book knowledge, it won't take you anywhere. But when you have an actual skill where you have engaged with something, it builds you up. A sailor might say, when in a ship, you might feel nauseous. Take this tablet, take that. But then they get used to it. And unless you go through it, you can't say, looking at a book, "These are my remedies for nausea in a ship." It won't take you anywhere. But you need to go and do it. So God allowed things to happen. And then he intervenes, he comes into it to help you. So God is it. We need to understand that period. We are not saying, how some in the hidden in the under the ground, and you stumble upon it, and you start digging, and you dig, and you scraping, and you're seeing this thing coming up, and you start excavating around it, trying to. We are not, God is not like that. He is there. He's complete. And the knowledge of God is in us in completion. It's not like, I'm discovering God. So I'm spending time to discover God. He's not showing a finger of Him, one eye, one leg. No, He reveals Himself whole. So when He reveals Himself, we embrace Him as whole. So God is complete. There are two extremes in people understanding God, right? One extreme is this is through the history in Christianity itself. In Christian, there were the priests as well. Christian teachers who couldn't understand who God is in completion. They went to this extreme saying God is an angry and a bullying God. This is not a pagan religion I'm talking about. This is in Christianity. It's called Arianism. It came up in Egypt, in Alexandria. A guy called Arius. He was the bishop of Alexandria, one of the biggest cities at that time. Christian. But he said, no, can't get this. Maybe there is a God who is angry and bullying, and to save us from this God came Jesus. No, these are teachings that were done at that time. And then he said, because he's God, Jesus can't be killed, so he's escaped the cross. These are controversial things and then Jesus is not the same person as God. So they had a lot of complications. So that's one extreme. Then the other extreme is, say, God is love only. Merciful, loving, this cute God. Full of love. So you can just snuggle with Him, tickle Him a bit. He won't be upset. So you have that extreme. God understands us, that we are fallen people. I am a sinful being. I am a human. So God understands. We have that type of an attitude. So you don't try to change. So we all know God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. All religions and all ideas of different pagan understanding, they are not wandering into this thing called the supernatural being is omnipresent. That's why you have land gods or land deities. They're called land deities. You know, this region has this deity. That region has this type of a deity. So when there's battle, you are basically battling with these forces. These are actual things that people have been doing. So when the children of Israel, the first captivity from Babylon, so Babylon came in 3 waves and took 3 times. The first captivity where Daniel was taken from Jerusalem to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, Ezekiel was taken as well. At the same time, Ezekiel was 25 years old. Daniel was a young man, 16, 17. So Ezekiel had 5 years to become a priest who can sacrifice, but now he's taken into Babylon. And he knew that he will never see his home again. He was a young married man, left everything that he will never see. So he was thinking, and what happened? He saw this amazing thing which he can't explain, so he started to explain it through our understanding, creation. But the whole purpose of God revealing himself to Ezekiel is to show that I am not limited with borders. And he sees him going to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west. And he goes wherever he wants, wherever the Spirit takes. This throne moves from every corner. So that whole idea is to say that he is a omnipresent God. Omnipresent God. So we know all that about God. But we all have a bit of a limit of knowing God. You really don't want to know him a lot. So you start listening to about God for a while, and then you start to doze off. The parts that you're not interested, you slowly move, your mind wanders straight to something else, because you don't want to hear what you want to hear. Like you want to hear only what you want to hear. So you move away. So God is complete. He is omnipotent God, omniscient God, omnipresent God, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-knowing, and all over in one time. Satan is not. When sometimes people say, Satan is bothering me, he's disturbing me, either we are saying Satan is omnipresent, which is putting him equal to God, or we are mistaken. Because it's the demons who are running around doing things. Because Satan can't be in one in every place the same time. He can't. He is running back and forth. That's it. So we need to understand that side of it as well. Now, for us, the message is for us, where we all have to know that we are in God's economy. We are in God's economy. The Greek word itself is oikonomia. Oikos is house, nomos is law. Household law. We are in God's household law. So God has a plan. This economy is not for God to exist, because he exists. It is for us, for his creation. So we are in this economy for what? To know that we are being taken from this fallen state to be with God for eternity. That's the whole gospel. That's the whole gospel, church. If you don't like worship, guess what? News. Because you'll be 24/7 worshiping God in eternity. So if you don't like worship, you have a problem. Exit. So, household administration is the actual Greek translation. So God has an eternal plan. He has a plan for his creation, but his creation, his plan, is centered around God, man. Around man. See, the Bible is not there for us to say, it is not there as a license for God or identity card saying, look guys, I exist. It's not. Bible is for us to know and to know that we, from the fallen state, that we have an option to come back to God. Because we were created for eternity. After the fall, the age came down. Joshua asked me, how come, Adam lived 900 or 1,000 years? We can't even work out. We can't, because we have a time limit after the sin, after the fall. So God says, for in that economy, now if you take an example, Pharaoh. People say Pharaoh had no choice. Pharaoh did have a choice, but he didn't accept God. So this is what the Bible says in Romans chapter 1, verse 20 to 25. It is what it says. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. That means anybody who has eyes to look around can't be excused. Because although God, they glorify him as God, nor were thankful. Being thankful is very important. Thankful is that you acknowledge his presence. But became few thoughts, and their foolish darkened. Their hearts were darkened because they did not accept his presence. So what happened? For Pharaoh didn't want to accept it because he had his own deities. He didn't want this Yahweh from Israel trying to tell me what to do. Who is he to walk into my land, which is Egypt? He had that type of an idea. And it continues. Professing to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man and birds, four-footed animals, and creeping things. Therefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness. God gives up, allows it. Not give up, but allows. Okay, fine. If you don't want it, that's your choice. But then they move away, and it says, in the lust of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and worship and serve the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. So people start to worship the creation and not the Creator. People start to worship the gift and not the one who gave the gift. People start to worship the provision and not the provider. Why? Because they choose to do it. You choose to do it. That's why sometimes it's very hard to thank him. And Paul says, let's turn to Romans chapter 9. I'm going to skim it through and then we're going to read chapter 10 completely. So, chapter 9 is talking about If you have your Bibles, turn to it. Read it. Go home, read it. It's a bit complicated. Why? Because here Paul is saying, God's plan, these things have happened because God planned it. But his intention is not to say God plays chess. The pawn on the table can't say, I'm not moving to that black, G3. He can't. The pawn has to move when you move it, if you know chess. God, it is what he's trying to explain is that people themselves have hardened their hearts. What we just read in Romans. So, this is what he says. I'm reading from verse 14 onwards. What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with God? Certainly not. For he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whomever I have compassion. So then, is it not for him who wills? Nor of him who runs, but of God who shows mercy. Verse 17. For the scripture says to the Pharaoh, for this very purpose I have raised you up, that I may show my power in you, and that my name may be declared in all the earth. Now people build doctrines out of this section, saying we have no choice. You have been selected. We have a selection. So you are just a pawn in God's game. There are doctrines, Christian doctrines, which actually holds on to this, and they are ready to die for it. None of us are going to die on that hill. The thing is, what this part is, where Moses went to Pharaoh, saying, let my children go, Pharaoh did not want to do it. And when God was trying to show him with signs and wonders, he didn't want to do it. So that was that conversation. So what Paul is saying here is that, Pharaoh had that opportunity, but then God allowed it to happen because he didn't want to fall into his economy. Verse 18. Therefore, he has mercy on whom he wills, and whom he wills, he hardens. You will say to me then, why does he still find fault? For who has resisted his will? But indeed, O man, who are you to reply against God? Will the thing that formed says to him who formed it, why have you made me like this? Does not the potter have the power over the clay from the same lump to make one vessel for honor and another for dishonor? What if God, wanting to show his wrath and to make his power known, endure with much long suffering the vessel of wrath prepared for destruction, and that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy, which he has prepared beforehand for glory. Even us, whom he called, not of Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. Now, I'll stop there before you guys fall asleep. Now, the thing is, here Paul is basically saying, we are in God's economy. But the funny part is, because God sees everything in a moment of time, he knows what is going to happen. He knows who's going to do what. But he won't intervene unless we call on him. That is something very important for us to know. So I'm not going to read Romans 10 because I can see droopy eyes going through reading this portion. So you do that before you go to bed tonight. Chapter 10 if you want to. Anyway, moving forward. But we can be ignorant. We can be ignorant of who God is because you haven't looked, you didn't spend time looking for God. So what happens to us? What does it even mean to us? All of us. Whether God is complete or not, how does that impact me? It impacts us in this way. Either you are for God or against Him. There are no middle grounds. I might know that there is God, but I really don't want to hang around with Him because He's too rough, too demanding. But we have to understand that we are, whether you like it or not, we are all in His economy, in His plan. Whether you choose it or not. You can follow Him or you cannot follow Him. There's no middle ground again. Whether you like it or not. Two things. Either you follow Him with all your heart or not follow Him at all. Or else it won't work. So some people about God, about God, don't accept God at all. That's period. I don't want to know this complicated thing called God. I'm happy the way I am. But then, that's a different part. But the guys who accept God has a situation. It is as if, you accept God, but God has to do whatever you want. That's the type of religion. You go to the God who makes thunder and rain, and you do offering and do whatever and say, rain for my harvest. You go to a deity and say, here, sacrifice I give. As if, you bargain. You ask for them. You domesticate the deity. God doesn't want to be. He's not willing to be domesticated. So sometimes we have this situation where saying, God, help me to do this plan A. But if it doesn't work, take B and C. But all three plans are my plans. And when God says, I will take the plan G, you go like, is this really God? Then you might fast and pray and go from one person to another person to another person to another until you hear one person say, yes, yes, yes. This is your plan. So you're very happy. That's another. It's like, you go to a dumb, mute idol, which I have done many, many years. And you look at it, you do various things. Fruit baskets, coconuts, you try various little things. Various things. And trying to bargain. But sadly, people do that with God. You say, Lord, I give myself to you. Let your will be done. And then you go and become a Hagar. Not Hagar, actually, Sarai. Trying to help Abraham to fulfill God's plan. And what happened? He created an Ishmael. And that pain is to all generations. Because Sarah thought, look, I can't have children anymore. Let me help God. Maybe this is God's plan. Abraham thought, okay, maybe I will help God. Give him a push start so that his will come. And what happened? It created an Ishmael, unwanted problem for generations. And it's there still, whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not, it's still there. Turn on the news, you'll see it. Some accept God, but their intellectuality and the pride stops them from experiencing God's miracle. One person was Naaman, the Syrian. In the 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 16, 1 to 16, I won't go there. You'll find that Naaman had leprosy. So he went to his king and said, he was suffering. And one of his servants said, there is a man in Judah, in Israel, that he is able to heal you. So Naaman goes to the king of Syria and says, give me a letter, because I'm going into an enemy grounds. Say that I'm coming in peace, because I want to go to this man to be healed from my leprosy. Now this is a general of the army of Syria, a big, powerful, mighty man. So he took his army, took the letter from the king, went to Judah, and gave it to the king. And king thought, this is a joke. How can we heal a man's leprosy? And if we can't heal him, they're going to come and kill us all and take over the nation. So that's what the king thought. And he wept. And he tore his clothes and started crying and weeping. And then Elijah hears this. He says, what's the problem? And then he gives the story and said, tell him to come. So Naaman comes to Elijah. And what happens? Elisha sends a messenger. He doesn't even come out to see him. Go dip 7 times. So let's quickly turn to the 2 Kings chapter 5. I'm going to read from verse from verse 10 onwards. Chapter 5, verse 10, 2 Kings. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, go 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean. Verse 11. But Naaman, now this is the general, became furious and went away and said, indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and wave his hands over the place and heal the leprosy. Are not Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be cleaned? So he turned and went away in rage. He got angry. He didn't even come to see me. He didn't do his ritual. He just told me to go and take a shower in this rubbish Jordan when I can go to Damascus, which has better water. What happened? He left. And then one of his servants said, verse 13, and his servants came near and spoke to him and said, my father, if the prophets had told you to do something great, would you have not done it? How much more than when he says to you, wash and be cleaned. So he went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan. Just imagine his pride and arrogance, and now he has to go. Everybody's staring at him. And, I came all the way from Damascus to just dip myself 7 times in the Jordan. And he went down and he dipped 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and was cleaned. See, God can restore your skin if He wants. No wrinkles. Perfect. If He wants. A child's skin that Naaman got. So, what happens if he went out of that place with pride? He wouldn't have even experienced this mighty miracle. So then, sometimes we are like that. When God says, wait on me, we go like, shuffling our feet, waiting. When, Lord? God says, don't do it. I wait till I tell you. You go like, okay, waiting. And as soon as you stumble on something, you might think, that's my cue. And you jump. And you start doing things to help God in His economy. Guess what? You'll end up having a Ishmael. Whether you like it or not, it's going to be sticking to you. Abraham couldn't fix that problem. He had this issue going right through. He couldn't fix it. So, why? Because even like Abraham, we try to help God in His economy. When God says you wait, what do? You wait. You wait until He says. Sadly, if you don't hear Him, what are you supposed to do? If you don't hear Him, you still wait. However long, you wait. But when He says move, you move. I won't read through it. You know this story where King David was running away from Saul. Saul was hunting him. First, he was hiding in a cave. And Saul didn't know David was inside that cave. He came in to take a nap. And his guards were outside waiting. And he slept. And David sees it. He's inside the cave. He comes. The soldiers, the people around him said, whoa, God has given this man to you. Isn't that exciting? What did he say? No, I'm not going to raise my hand on a God's anointed. This is not my will. This is not how I'm going to take the blessing which he was blessed by Samuel, saying, you will be the king. He didn't want to take that opportunity. He said, I'm not going to take it like this. And he cut a small part of the garment and kept it. And then he communicated with this. So you can read it in 1 Samuel chapter 24. 26 is how the second time Saul came looking for David, encamped. Saul's tent was right in the middle. All the soldiers were around him. People were sleeping around Saul, including his general Abner. And David goes with one person into Saul's tent. And his cousin, he says, great, your God has given you this man. Let's pin him to the ground. And he takes this thing to push him and kill him immediately. And what does David says? You don't understand God's plan. This is not how I'm going to be king. I'm not going to raise my hand against God's anointed. And he refused to kill him. Just imagine, church, in our situation, you might come across people saying, this is the cue from God that the enemy is given. You take it, kill this whole thing, take it. Great opportunity. And what happens? You go and mess it up. David did not even raise his hand. He refused to raise his hand. And what happened? Nicely, everything was transitioned. Saul died in a battle, and then he was brought into Judah. Then the whole of Israel came and accepted him as God. He did not have to do a single thing to help God in his economy. And even up to now, Jesus is called the Son of David. And then when he was running away from his own son, Absalom, with his army, he's running away because he's scared because the son is coming to kill him. Shimei, a relation of Saul, comes out and curses King David, throws rocks at him. This is the king with his army running and saying, good on you, you don't. This is your punishment. And he was throwing dust and cursing David. Now, and then David's, one of his commanders, again a cousin, says, why would he speak to you, king? Can I go and cut his neck off? Give me the order. I'll chop him. He can't insult you, king. And then David turns to him and says, oh, you sons of Zeruiah. That's his auntie. You don't understand. If God has allowed this man to curse me, who am I to stop it? But I know God's plans are greater than that curse. And he writes a psalm in that. It's amazing, his understanding, church. Same with us. Understand God is complete and he has plans which are complete. Not parts. It becomes parts only when we intervene and try to fix things. And it drags and drags and drags and drags. Years to come. Torment, struggles, issues, sleepless nights, cryings, battle after battle, pains. And then you sometimes might even say, these are my battle scars. I am fighting for God. I am fighting with God in this situation. God doesn't want us to fight because he said the battle has already won. We don't need to fight for God. He has even the angels ready to do it, which is going to happen. And not on our time, but in his time. But for us, we don't need to make things happen. Remember that very carefully. Very carefully. And that's why Jesus came as flesh. He came, and this is what John writes in 1 John chapter 1, verse 1 to 4. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled concerning the word of life. The life was manifested, and we have seen and bear witness and declare to you that eternal life which was with the Father and was manifested to us. That which we have seen and heard, we declare to you, that you also may have fellowship with us. And truly our fellowship is with the Father and with the Son, Jesus Christ. And these things we write to you, that your joy may be full or complete. Read this again. And truly our fellowship is with the Father and with His Son, Jesus Christ. And these things we write to you, that your joy may be full. It's a full, complete joy, church. To know that we are not just left alone, hanging around, trying to fend for ourselves, life like an orphan. We have this idea saying, I am the one who have to look after me. You don't need to. It's good to look after yourself, or else there's nothing will be left to worship God. But it doesn't mean everything is what you do. Everything becomes what you do when you disobey God or can't wait for God and you go and do things. And those problems will become eternal. It's going to follow you wherever you go. So it's very important. And let's, can I have the worship team? So I'll quickly read from 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 10 to 13. Therefore, I endure all things for the sake of the elect, that they also may obtain the salvation which is in Christ Jesus with eternal glory. This is a faithful saying. For if we die with Him, we shall also live. If we endure, we shall also reign with Him. If we deny Him, He also will deny us. And if we are faithful, He remains faithless. He remains faithful. He cannot deny Himself. Church, God is God, complete God. He's not evolving. He's not changing. He's not fixing His problems. He's not trying to evolve with you. But the idea is that when we know that God is complete, when we know He knows all things, you don't need to labor. You don't need to make efforts. You learn to sit at His feet. And Jesus says, Mary chose the better thing. Martha was running around, trying to fulfill things around. But Mary sat at Jesus' feet to listen to Him. It is important for us to listen to God. It is important for us to listen to God. Him and Him alone, and not do anything before God. Because I'll tell you, you will have an Ishmael. And that is going to be for eternity. Let's all rise up. I'm going to read Psalm 97. And we'll finish off. Psalm 97, a good psalm. Let's read. Psalm 63. Let's read. Oh God, I'm going to read from verse 1 on. Oh God, you are early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and a thirsty land where there is no water. So I have looked for you in the sanctuary to see your power and your glory. Because your loving kindness is better than life. My lips shall praise you. Thus I will bless you while I live. I will lift up my hands in your name. My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness. And my mouth shall praise you with joyful lips. When I remember you on my bed, I meditate on you in the night watch, because you have been my help. Therefore, in the shadow of your wings, I will rejoice. My soul is close behind you. Your hand uphold me. But those who seek my life to destroy it shall go into the lower parts of the earth. They shall fall by the sword. They shall be a portion for jackals. But the king shall rejoice in God. Everyone who swears by him shall glory. But the mouth of those who speak lies shall be stopped. So the King David writes this. Church, we are in the same situations. You might be going through the same situations. Fear, challenges, uncertainties. You don't know what you're facing, what your future is. Remember this, like David says, we know that God is with us. So how do you know? How do you relax in that? And when you meditate on Him day and night. So meditating on God is not going and looking for a cave somewhere or a tree and climb that tree and just hang around. You know, it's not where you're trying to find an inhabited place. You meditate on God. You can meditate on God at any point, anywhere. If we are able to think about other things while you are doing a work or a job or talking to somebody, your mind wanders. Let it wander to God. Into God. Look into God. Seek Him. Every situation, seek Him. That seeking is not you do. It is seeking to know the heart of God. Knowing the heart of God. Hallelujah. Just close your eyes, church. Worthy is the Lamb. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. You might not know the words. Just don't look at anything. Just close your eyes. Take a moment. It might be your only time for this whole week. So stop looking around. Just close your eyes. Just bind your mind with God's mind as He's willing to. Heart.